Well, thanks so much for joining us today. As you can see, I have Ammon Bundy joining me. And Ammon, first question I have that I know is on a lot of people's minds is, how are you doing? How are you holding up?
I'm actually doing quite well. I would say the difficult part when it comes to holding up is, what it does to my family when the sheriff deputy or somebody comes up here, trying to threaten arrest. But myself, I'm fine. We're kind of used to swimming in deep waters, so we're doing good, and we're holding up well.
Okay, I know that there's a great deal of concern because right now the popular narrative is that, well, there's an arrest warrant out there for Ammon, which I guess in some people's eyes is going to make you kind of a fugitive. But let's put this into perspective. We're talking about an arrest warrant that's been issued in a civil case. Is that normal?
No, not at all. It's extremely rare. What's happened here is, St. Luke's, who's the largest institution in Idaho, employs more people, has, the largest payroll, massive amounts of real estate. They are the largest institution in Idaho. Civilly sued me because they didn't like what I said when it came to the baby Cyrus case and all that was going on there. And they originally sued me for $300,000. And that was actually split between Diego Rodriguez, who's baby Cyrus's grandfather, and myself, and some entities that they say that we own. And anyway, so, I looked at it like, well, at the most, my personal responsibility to this suit would be $50,000. And to me, it wasn't worth fighting. Let them get a default judgment. And because I'd spend, much, much more on that on attorneys. And I have proof of that when they did all that stuff to my family and I in 2016 and 14 and all of that, I spent $534,000 on lawyers. $534,000 is what my lawyer cost was. And so, $50,000, I was like, well, I'm not going to go get attorneys and spend the next 3 or 4 or 5 years in court and hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'll just let them collect on the $50,000. But the judge refused to default. According to the Idaho rules, Rule 55 is civil procedure. She has an obligation if I don't respond or show up. The law says that she must default, and she didn't, and she kept the case open. And once St. Luke saw that I wasn't going to defend myself and that the judge was just going to let them continue to keep it open, well, they amended the lawsuit 4 times, and now it's $7.5 million. They've racked up over a $500,000 legal fee. And the way they're doing this, Bryan, is they're setting depositions for like expert witnesses in California and other things, say in Montana, and they're taking their entire team. Well, I wouldn't say their entire team, but they're taking a team of lawyers that are getting paid, that are billing like $600 an hour. They're flying to these places and having depositions, and then they're billing me for it. And these depositions were anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 per pop. And then just the legal paperwork, I've got stacks and stacks and stacks that they send me, all the time. And so this is lawyer craft in order to build a massive legal bill so that I have to pay it. And the judge is just letting them do this. So anyway, and then to top it all off, they claimed that I'm saying bad things about them, and and so they basically get the judge to give a protective order or a gag order, and not where I can't talk about the case, I can't talk about them, I can't talk about St. Luke's, I can't talk about anything that went on in Baby Cyrus case. And they've done the same thing with Diego. And then they said that I have violated that gag order, or that protective order, and therefore they're issuing an arrest warrant for me on this. And so that's what's happening. And that's basically the crux of it all. And so Now I got my own local sheriff here and his deputies trying to arrest me on a civil case when it should have been defaulted. And my portion of at most would have been $50,000 plus maybe a $5,000 or $6,000 worth of legal fees. And that's where we're at. It's unbelievable to think that now, they're trying to take everything I own, throw me in jail. I mean, that's where we're, and then my own local sheriff is trying to enforce it.
So 2 quick questions for you. Going back to the depositions, my understanding is that some of the people that they're deposing, who are expert witnesses, and I mean, some of these are kind of dubious witnesses. Well, I'm an expert on extremism. I'm an expert on, anti-government activism and so forth. My understanding is they get paid for being deposed, and it's quite a grift. I mean, it's not like they're getting paid, what a juror would get paid, to sit on jury duty. It sounds like they're actually raking in some pretty big bucks. Is there any truth to that?
Absolutely. We have a, basically a amortization or an expense list of what they're getting paid, and some of them are getting paid like a set down fee of like $2,000 or $3,000 plus $600 an hour. It ranges, but yeah, they're getting paid a lot of money. And these are people that, in the past, for the last decade or so, have been my family and I's specific enemies, and they're basically saying now they're expert witnesses on, like domestic terrorism and extremism and all of that. And they're going around the country, the Western United States mostly, rounding up these people and deposing them so that they could use that to try to convince a jury of that we're something that we're not. It's just I don't know. How do you explain such a thing?
Okay, second question, and that is the idea that a gag order is issued, so you can't talk about this. How common is that in a civil case?
I don't know how common it is in a civil case. I know that's one of the things the courts do, though. They try to seal a case, or they put a gag order on it, or both. In this case, they've done it both. And then so that the public can't know what's going on, so that they can completely control the narrative, and in this case, Meridian Police Department was wrong. CPS was wrong. St. Luke's was wrong. They took a baby from loving and caring parents who were doing everything right with this baby. And they involved the state, got the state involved, forcefully took the baby, literally ripped the baby from the mother's hands after a huge show and lies and everything else. It was done by CPS. CPS now basically admitted, because they had to drop the case and all that they were wrong from the very beginning. And they were wrong from the very beginning. And then St. Luke's gets involved because, well, they actually started the entire thing by referring them to CPS because they didn't like the parents didn't like the medical care they were getting from St. Luke's. So that's what's going on. And then after they take the baby, St. Luke's makes anywhere from 30 to, we don't even know, at least over $30,000 by billing Medicare for the baby. And the CPS made at least 40,000, probably more. We don't know exactly by taking the baby. This is all coming from the federal government, that they bill the federal government. So this is what's going on. And they don't like me saying this. They don't like me, what I just said right there, talking about St. Luke's, that right there is what they have. Now I'm, I guess, in violation again of the protective order. And that I'm sorry, I'm not going to silence myself in the wrongdoing that they've done. And then what they do is they isolate me because now I can't talk, so it's a political warfare 101.
But the most important consideration here is it true? If it's the truth, then there's no reason why it shouldn't see the light of day.
Yeah, I'm starting to learn, though, that the defamation in Idaho doesn't matter if it's true or not. If you could prove that you did it for money, because what they're saying is they're having this narrative that I did all of this for money or for like popularity, so that I could get subscribers and stuff. they're saying that everything I did for baby Cyrus and all of that I did for money and gain. And I guess from what I'm understanding is it in Idaho, if you could prove that he did it, you did it for money and gain, even if it's true, it's still defamation. So, but it's just ridiculous. Anybody who knows me, anybody who understands the case knows that I did not do this in any way for gain. I mean, it's only cost me a ton of money and trouble. So, and it might cost me everything I own plus my liberty. And I hope it doesn't cost me my life.
Well, and you actually, you wrote a letter, an open letter to Eric Stidham, who is the lead attorney for Holland and Hart, which is representing St. Luke's. And you offered actually to him, to Chris Roth, the CEO of St. Luke's, I will give you everything that I own, and you can take it all, and I'll start fresh, but let's let this drop. They won't do it. Why won't they just take, what they want in terms of, financial compensation or financially ruining you, and that be good enough? Well, I mean, what more do they want?
Well, they want to completely silence me and ruin me so that I can't rally people when they take babies or when they try to take people's property or when they, do things to people. And that's what I do. I rally people around abuses and usurpations of, the government and large institutions. And, I'm not trying to be any type of a conspiracy theorist here, but St. Luke's, just to put the pieces together, people can connect them how they want to. But St. Luke's is the largest institution in Idaho, has the largest employment, a massive real estate base, huge amounts of power and influence in Idaho. And their lobbyist group is IACI. And IACI, Governor Little served on the IACI board as the chairman for several years. And he's been involved in that in many different places. And Governor Little's chief of staff also served on the board as the chairman, and the list goes on and on. And guess who the IACI attorney law firm is? It's Holland and Hart. And so I'm fighting the establishment here. That's what I'm fighting. I'm fighting the good old boys, the establishment of Idaho. And they're using St. Luke's in this case and Holland and Hart and all the power that they're getting. They're using it to try to crush me because I've been very vocal about them abusing people, abusing power, misusing money, all the COVID stuff that went on, all of that. And then not only that is I ran a campaign, as people know, for governor, and we pulled in almost 20% of the votes, a fifth of Idaho. It wasn't even close to be able to what we can win. I'm not delusional that I was close to winning, but they had us around 5-6% is all I'd get when we're pushing almost a fifth of the votes. Well, that concerns them, and those are real votes of real people going down and supporting me and my message.
Well, and something that I think lends credence to what you're saying here about how you're perceived as a political threat, or at least your candidacy helped illustrate that there is a growing distrust and a collapse of trust in those who are currently in power, is the fact that they went after your campaign. It was named as part of the civil lawsuit as well.
It is that what they are suing Ammon Bundy for governor, the Ammon Bundy for governor campaign. That's one of the defendants in this case. And they're saying that if they win, that I think it ends at what's going to be about $1.5 million is what I would owe personally, what People's Rights would owe, what Ammon Bundy for governor would owe, and then Diego and his entities are the other part of it. So yeah, they're absolutely suing the Ammon Bundy for governor campaign. And right on top of that, some of the original notes, the medical notes from the doctor that called CPS, in those notes it says that the baby's parents are friends with Ammon Bundy, who's running for governor. It actually says that in the medical notes, in some of the original medical notes. So
that is a rather curious coincidence, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not trying to whip up some conspiracy. I definitely know there's collusion, and I believe that there is some type of thing going on there. But either way, This is a direct attack upon me from the establishment.
And forgive me for making this comparison, but since it's in the news, Donald Trump was just indicted on a bunch of other counts now, and it sounds like they're looking to put him away, for up to 100 years if he's convicted or something. It's very, very clear. Even if you're not a Trump supporter or a diehard Trump supporter, it's very, very clear that the people who opposed him, the establishment, if you will, and that includes Republicans and Democrats, absolutely lost their minds over the last 7 years. They have been obsessive. They've been deranged in how they would do anything and pull out all stops, including perverting the Justice Department in order to make that happen. I see what's happening to you and Diego as kind of a smaller state level version of that, particularly here in the state of Idaho. It sounds like the powers that be saw that you polled a very respectable number of votes in the gubernatorial election last year. And it wouldn't surprise me if, a lot of this, it seems like a lot of it broke or really, escalated after the campaign. It's like they realized, my goodness, this guy actually is a threat. We better do something to shut him up or to get him out of the way, just like we're seeing being done to Donald Trump.
Yeah, this is a banana public type of political warfare where they use the force of law to try to crush their political enemies. There's no doubt about it. And, I've been involved in it for about a decade now. So I'm very, versed on what they do and how they do it. And our courts, our judges have become just political machines to push whatever political narrative those who have control of it want. And someone like me comes along, someone like President Trump or Donald Trump comes along, Diego, and many others. I mean, let's make a list. We've got, Alex Jones. We've got, like I said, President Trump. We've got Tucker Carlson. We've got, the list goes on. I mean, I need to make a list, but these are all people that have been attacked using the mechanism of the courts, and all of them have been silenced and or politically prosecuted because of by the courts, because of this political warfare that is being waged by the tool that's supposed to bring justice. And that's why I refuse to participate. This is a political prosecution that's happening to me. And if I go and participate in this process, all I do is legitimize it. And I refuse to legitimize it. This is so political. I mean, the laws are so clear about not allowing this to happen, because if you allow what's happening to me, then you destroy free speech. You destroy it. You make it so that people cannot speak out against, injustices, and because they can't either afford it, or because they're constantly fighting to not be in and out of jail. So basically they're saying, look, we can take your baby, we can take your property, we can take whatever we want, we take your babies, and you've got to sit down and shut up. You can't say a word. And if you say a word about it, the judge is going to issue a warrant for your arrest because you're in violation of her protective order. I mean, and not only that, is in the end, if they get what they want, I will literally have nothing. I will have nothing. They will have completely cleaned me out. And not only that, not only have nothing, but they'll take everything I earned for the next, who knows how long, the rest of my life. That's what they're trying to do here, because I said, look, I don't agree with, I think it was absolutely wrong that you took this baby. And they were wrong. They were wicked in what they did.
That's the key. They can do it, and you can't speak out about it, even if they got it wrong. CPS, as you mentioned, dropped any charges that they were, looking like they might have filed. It's very clear the baby was returned to his parents after about a week, but the people who you called out, be it St. Luke's, Meridian Police Department, Health and Welfare, Child Protective Services, look, anybody can make a mistake. But for some reason, these are entities that are not willing to admit their mistake. And in fact, for you pointing out the mistake, now you have to be punished for letting the public know that they goofed up.
Well, and that's, that's why our founders, put in the Bill of Rights the right to speech, the right to assemble, the right to grieve government for redress. These are all the things that we did, And I want to point out, Bryan, that I've never been charged for this, like criminally charged. I've never been criminally charged for anything, because everything that we did during the time we were in front of, St. Luke's and all of that, everything was completely legal, completely within the rights that the Constitution protects. And they lied about locking down the hospital. All of that was a lie. I wasn't even there when they did that. And so, and that they've got a lot of mileage out of that. The media's got a lot of mileage out of that, because people just fall for it. And so if I'd done something criminally, then don't you think that the establishment and the law would have charged me? I guarantee they went through every little video and everything that I did and Diego did to try to find a way to criminally charge us, and they couldn't find it. So what do? They just sue us, knowing that it doesn't matter. The truth doesn't matter. As long as we have more money and the most powerful legal team, the law doesn't matter. We can just crush them anyway.
I want to come back to something that you had pointed out about the illegitimacy of the court system and what they're trying to compel you to be a part of. I know there was an editorial release just recently by Idaho Leaders United, and it was specifically former and I think maybe even some current members of law enforcement. And they make this statement about, well, Ammon Bundy needs to come and have his day in court and make his case. And we don't know how it will turn out, they say, but he needs to come and make his case in court. That rings very disingenuous, I think, to anybody with two brain cells to rub together. Can you get any kind of fair representation in Judge Norton's courtroom?
No, not at all. I mean, all I do is, again, legitimize the process. But they are these leaders of the law enforcement, if you will, and these retired leaders of law enforcement, I completely destroy their time. Well, I wouldn't say destroy, but you'll get what I'm talking about. If I don't participate, then their little gig is up. Then they can't survive if people stop participating. And so they're like, man, this is a huge threat to us and huge threat to our system. Because if we stop participating because we don't have any trust in it anymore, then we've just called their cards. And I refuse to participate and legitimize this process. It's unjust, it's wrong, and the process that they followed is actually against the law, and it's certainly against the Constitution. How can it be more clear? I have a right to speak. I mean, I knew this family very well. I knew baby Cyrus since the time they brought him home. I was friends with the family and the mother while she was pregnant and going through all of that. I mean, and then when they took the baby, I'm like, of all the people in the world, this baby was loved more than probably almost anybody that I've ever seen. In fact, I was worried about him getting spoiled. He was loved so much and surrounded by. So when CPS somehow claimed that he was being, whatever the claim was, that he was in imminent danger, that there was neglect, I'm like, absolutely not. And what St. Luke's is saying, and the judge and all of that, is that I can't speak out against them when something like this happens. I have to be silent. Well, I'm sorry. That's why the founders protected the right to free speech, because that's exactly what was happening to them back then. They were getting prosecuted and tried for speaking out against the king and the officers and all those things. And so they made sure, the very first thing they made sure is that the religion, their right to worship was protected, and then their right to free speech was protected, and their right to assemble was protected, and the right to grieve government. Well, why are all those three things protected in the First Amendment? One, because it's your belief, because it's your right to speak out, and it's your right to assemble, to show government you're not happy, and to grieve them. Well, that's exactly what we did. But the court doesn't care. They don't care. And I will not legitimize that type of unjust action from the courts. I will not.
They try to portray it, Ammon, as, well, this is you making a mockery of our system of justice, when in reality, what you're describing here is you are withdrawing your consent because that system is no longer working in the interest of justice. It's working in the interest of the system itself.
Yeah, and this is what happens. I mean, historically, go look at what's happened with the courts in history. The courts killed hundreds of thousands of some of the most humble Christian saints in history. The courts have been used to destroy political enemies. I mean, destroy, their opponents. I mean, this is what happens to the courts. They eventually deteriorate. And yeah, that's where we're at in this country. I hate to say it, but that's where we're at. We're certainly that in Ada County. And I went to those courts. So I participated in those courts, and I saw how absolutely corrupt and wicked they were. And in this case, where it's a civil case, I'm just like, I am not participating. If they want to try to get some judgment, then they could collect $50,000 from me. That's the inexpensive way out of here. But that wasn't good enough for them. And even after they basically say, no, we want $7.5 million. Then I say, look, then take everything I have, take it all. I just want peace. I want you to leave me alone. That's not good enough. I'm directly saying this to Chris Roth, who's the CEO of St. Luke's. Take everything, just everything that's in my name that I own, I'll give it to you. Just come get it. They won't even take that and they're continuing to build, to crank up this huge, massive bill. They're continuing to use the courts because they have no interest in just peace. They have no interest in just, settling this and moving on. This is a mechanism to try to absolutely destroy me.
Well, and as you pointed out earlier, this isn't just benefiting St. Luke's or the law firm that's making an incredible amount of money, by keeping this thing alive. This is actually benefiting the players in the political establishment who have their hands tightly grasping power and in no way want to ever give that up. And they see you, I'm sure, as a threat, not because you're the people who voted for you were a bunch of mindless followers and just sheep waiting to be told, Ammon, tell us what to do, what to think. But you actually represented an alternative to business as usual, and you actually made a pretty good showing, which I can understand why that would put fear in the hearts of those power seekers and opportunists.
Yeah, they don't. I mean, let's just look at it on that aspect. They do not want me to run again because the momentum that I was gaining was tremendous. The only reason we didn't get into the 30% was just because of time, because the momentum we were gaining, that every place I went to for the last 3 or 4 months of my campaign, the standing room only, packed room everywhere I went. And people can witness that. People that went witnessed that. And the momentum was tremendous. And why? Why was the momentum tremendous? Because I was speaking the truth. I wasn't hiding it. I wasn't covering it up. I was flat out speaking exactly the truth of what's happening to Idaho, what these leaders, the good old boys in the establishment are bringing us into, that we're if we don't do what we have to do now, we're going to end up just like Oregon, Washington, California. That's what I was speaking, and I was filling up rooms speaking that. And the only reason why I didn't, like I said, get another 5, 10, 15% was simply because of time. And they know that. They know that if I was to run again, I would be probably in the 25%. Maybe I wouldn't win. It depends. You don't know. But they know that I am a threat to them. Why? Because I'm speaking the truth. And so this is their opportunity, to crush me, to just make it so that, one, I either leave Idaho because I have to. 2, I have no money or resources to run or to do anything to speak out at anybody. And 3, we're just so in such a desperate situation that we are barely just making it and functioning. And not only that, to make sure that anytime I get on my feet a little bit, they can knock me down because I have this $7.5 million judgment over my head. And that, if they can get away with it, that's what they'll do. Now, I don't believe they're going to get away with it the way they think they do. And that's, I've been in this situation before. I've fought, like this before. I've had to for the last decade. I've been forced to. And I've seen the hand of God come and protect me and resolve things. And do I believe that's going to happen again? Yeah, but I believe that'll happen just like it happened before, by good people getting involved. And so that's where we're at, Bryan.
Okay, let's talk for a moment about where it stands with Sheriff Donnie Wonder there in Gem County. I know the sheriff, for the most part, has taken kind of a slow and hands-off approach. We don't need to escalate this, but it sounds like St. Luke's was not happy with that. Tell me about this affidavit that they more or less coerced him to sign, that basically makes him a puppet who has to do whatever Judge Norton tells him to do.
Yeah, just a teeny bit of background on that. So when the sheriff's department said, well, we don't want to go out to Ammon Bundy anymore and serve him, and that's basically, they were tired of it. They've been serving me the last year. They were tired of it. The last time they came in, they went into one of my buildings, knocked on the windows, this and that, and I run them off. I was pretty upset with them for going into my building without permission, right? So then they said, well, tensions are escalating. We're not going to serve Ammon Bundy anymore. Well, St. Luke's then sued the sheriff's department, Gem County Sheriff's Department, through a writ of mandamus. And Gem County was like, we can't afford that. St. Luke's is this massive institution. They got this huge law firm. We can't afford that. And so they went to the St. Luke's and said, hey, drop the case. We'll do whatever, we'll serve him. And St. Luke says, well, that's not enough. Holland Hart, Eric Steidem leading the case, and said, well, that's not enough. If we're going to drop the case, we want you to sign an affidavit that you'll do whatever the judge tells you to in this case. Well, there's no reason for Sheriff Wonder to sign that. If he wants to win the writ of mandamus, he just serves him, and then there's nothing that they can do to claim he's not doing that. But the sheriff, probably through some really bad legal advice, signs the affidavit. So now he literally signed that he and his department will do whatever the judge tells him to do in this case. And so, yeah, he becomes just this puppet. And so what happened is they had, so then right after that, there was an arrest warrant for me. And they tried to exercise the warrant. They didn't get it done. But then for like 6 weeks, I never heard from them. I haven't seen them and all of that. And I did a video a few mornings ago and said, things have been pretty quiet around here. Well, just less than 2 hours later, here comes the sheriff deputies up here. There's 3 vehicles. There are probably 2 or 3 people in each one of them trying to arrest me again. And so I'm sure the sheriff was like, oh, we've got to go try or they're going to sue us again. And, because I signed this affidavit, then, that's basically a win for them, immediate win for them, because I signed the affidavit. And he's basically become the strong arm, this little puppet, like you said, of the Ada County courts. And so how can he protect the people in Gem County, keep his oath of office when he's been signing an affidavit that he'll do whatever the judge tells him to in the case? Not only that, Bryan, but he also went into an agreement with Ada County and allowed Ada County to basically do all the cybersecurity in Gem County. And that was just recent. I'm talking about just weeks ago. That has to be tied to this case too. So now Ada County Sheriff's Department can spy on the people in Gem County whenever they're on their internet or on the phones. And they have some type of agreement. Not only, and then also he in general will not defend the people of Gem County because he says it's too expensive. And they won't defend them legally because it's too expensive. So, I mean, where does that put the people of Gem County? Not only just me, but where does that put the people of Gem County if they have a sheriff who will not protect them against, what I say, very wicked people doing very wicked things? And here the sheriff is just, laid down and said, whatever you want us to do, we'll do. And then on top of that, Bryan, I've kind of gone on here a little bit, but on top of that, the sheriff's pretty weak, but he has this Lieutenant McIntosh, that I'm afraid that he has murder in his heart. He's so, He wants to be the guy that arrests Ammon Bundy, or shoots me or whatever else. He wants to be that guy. So he's lead and point every time, and, I have some information that, it's mostly hearsay, so I'm not going to talk to about it here. But, I'm worried, or not worried, but it's a concern that, the sheriff be like, hey, let's be patient with this. Let's let this work itself out. I'll make it look like I'm trying to do at St. Luke's. But then you got this lieutenant who's going rogue and trying to push the issue between, him and I.
So he's trying to escalate.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Tell me this. The sheriff takes an oath. He's elected by the people of his county. To whom is he, I guess, who is he supposed to serve? Is he supposed to serve the people that elected him? Does that oath bind him to execute his duties in fidelity to the people who elected him? Or is his fidelity only supposed to be to the system in which he's operating?
No, he was elected by the people because he is an equal branch of government. And we're supposed to have checks and balances. And he's supposed to check and balance the other branches of government. That means he could tell them no. If he doesn't feel like it is right, it's constitutional, he could tell them no. And he's supposed to tell them no in order to protect the people. However, what's happened in Idaho, and this has happened probably everywhere, is statutorily, there's statutes that try to create this control over the sheriff. And if you read the statutes of Idaho, it basically makes the sheriff like a bailiff, and that's unconstitutional. You're not one branch of government. The judicial branch of government is not supposed to tell, the executive branch of government what they have to do. And if they don't do it, that they can, be basically criminally charged. That's not the way it's supposed to work. And that's kind of what our statutes do when it comes to the sheriff. The sheriff's supposed to be a equal branch of government to the judicial and to the legislative branches on any level. And he's supposed to protect the people because he's the highest office that forces and polices the people in that area. And the people give them that power. That's obvious. And that's why he deputizes others, because he gets the power from the people and then he has to deputize. What is happening here in this case where he signed an affidavit and where he's being held, through basically the force of the courts is completely unconstitutional. And the courts, but the courts have done this for a long time because they have to have an enforcement arm. These judges they're actually weak. They're weak, they're corrupted, they're compromised, and in my opinion, most of them are wicked. They're all lawyers. So it's the judges and the lawyers that are laying the foundation of the destruction of this country. And they can't do anything without an enforcement arm. Well, they have found a way to make the sheriff believe that they have to do what the judges tell them to do, even though it's wrong, it's unconstitutional, it's immoral, all those things. But the sheriff still does it because he believes he has to.
I was looking at the Gem County Sheriff's Office website, and it lists the duties of the sheriff. Number one, top priority of an elected sheriff is to keep the peace. And what's happening right now with you and with Diego and with the sheriff, saying, yes, I will do whatever the courts tell me to do. You're not out there posing a threat to the community. You're not victimizing anybody, but it appears that things are being set in motion to where the sheriff's office is going to be used in anything but a peaceful fashion to take you by force and drag you, into the custody of the state. Ammon, what's the purpose? What purpose does it serve for them to arrest you? I'm still trying to understand how that would supposedly make the community or the state a safer place.
Yeah, I mean, there is no victim. This idea of the protective order is just to silence me. And I don't go around and steal from people or threaten people or hurt people. I mind my own business. I've got a family. I've got 6 children. I got a grandbaby now. My youngest is 8 years old. So I got little kids. I've got an orchard here. I work in my shop. I, provide for myself. I don't use the state to provide for myself. I might, and I look around and I go like, how, and then I stand up for people when they need it. Like, how have I turned into this enemy of the state? How have I turned into this criminal? I don't get it. I've never hurt anybody. I've never taken anybody's property. I've never done any of this stuff that's supposed to be crime, right? But somehow that is crime. But somehow I'm like enemy number one in the state of Idaho here, and the sheriff coming out here and using his deputies or doing it himself, coming out here and basically coming onto my property and trying to arrest me and creating a scene where they could, justify taking my life. How is that in any way justice? How is that any way the proper role of the law?
And something that has to be said here, when it came to baby Cyrus, and this would also be true for the Hammonds, this would even be true for when the feds were trying to take your family's cattle, you didn't have to step up. You could have chosen to look the other way, or you could have said, it's not my circus, not my monkeys, I'm not going to be a part of it. But you did choose to get involved. Why?
Well, I mean, first of all, this recent with baby Cyrus, I mean, can you imagine like that terrible thing happening to this family? They take the baby, and in most cases, they have these babies for 2 to 4 months. Even when they admit that CPS admits that it's wrong. By the way, 83% of the cases when they take a children, CPS comes back and says that we didn't have justification to do that. That's their own statistics. They just take them because they say, oh, just in case. And then they give them back and they say, oh, well, we were wrong. 83% of the time. And they'll have them for 2 to 4 months. And many times they take them and they have them for over a year. And in a smaller amount of cases, the parents never get them back. Imagine me, who I have a voice. I can reach people. I can reach hundreds of thousands of people quite quickly with my voice. Imagine me just saying to this little baby and this little beautiful little family, and who I know and love and been involved in, saying, well, good luck, fight that on your own. I mean, can you imagine me doing that? I would never do that, but I can't. I have an obligation. If I can reach people to bring justice and do good things, I have an obligation to do that. And in this case, that obligation was greater than probably any other case that I've had. But it's the same thing with the Hammonds. The exact same thing. I had a voice. I saw what was happening to the Hammond family. It was exactly what was happening in my family. It had been going on for decades. I knew it very clearly because I had experienced it. My family had experienced it. I knew what was happening to them, and it was unjust and wrong. And so how do I keep silent? I had to go do something. I always felt motivated, obligated by the Lord to go do something. And with my family, this was kind of the very beginning. Like, I mean, how could I just stay down in Arizona with my business and my employees and making money and all of that while I watch my family get completely crushed and destroyed, while I watch the FBI try to do another Waco on my family, which we learned later was exactly what their plan was. And so how could I just be silent? And how could I not act? But you're right, though, Bryan. I could have just stayed home and avoided all of this. I would have been a multimillionaire with this massive big company and all these things that I have done. And I would have been, sitting real pretty. But that's not what this life is about. And I don't believe that would have been morally right to stay home on any of these cases. When we see something wrong, we're supposed to act.
You're here. So one final question for you, Ammon. What can people do to help correct this injustice that's still unfolding right in front of our eyes? What can we do?
Well, right now there's an eminent concern because, I believe that they're trying to build this up. And with that, even the statements of the, those law enforcement and retired law enforcement, they're laying a foundation to basically come in here with some imminent attack and kill me. I mean, and I don't want to sound like, but that is what they're doing. They are literally laying this foundation in order to justify, either coming in here and doing something very harmful to me or taking my life. And so people need to be aware of that. Like, I do not want that to happen. There's no reason why that should happen. And so be aware of that. Contact the sheriff's department, send a letter to them, write an email to them. And then, I mean, I don't know what else. I do believe that something will open up. We are filing an appeal with the Ninth Circuit. So hopefully something comes out about that, because if they would take it up, I'm certain the Ninth Circuit would see this as a free speech matter. Because I mean, that's what it is. This is an attack on the United States Constitution, the First Amendment. I spoke out and followed exactly what the First Amendment tells us to do when we see an injustice in government or big institutions, large institutions. I spoke, I assembled, I grieved government. That's what we did. We did it and the court will not, the Idaho courts will not allow people to argue the First Amendment. And so we appealed to the federal courts. The federal courts, the local federal court here in Idaho wouldn't take it up. So now we're going to the district court to see, or the circuit court, the Ninth Circuit, to see if they'll take it up. So, pray that can happen. Pray that will, that they will pick it up and see this for what it is. Reach out to, the Attorney General basically says he doesn't have any power in this case, Earl Labrador. In one way he does, and another way he doesn't, because she's done it as a contempt of court charge. I don't know. Besides that, pray and write to the sheriff and keep an eye on my family. I know that I'm not supposed to yield. I absolutely believe that I'm right. I was right from the beginning on all of this, and the further we go into this, the further I see that I was right. And so, I guess that's where we're at, Bryan.
Okay. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
Well, I just want to emphasize again that, if we in this country cannot get control of our judicial system or the law, then we're in tremendous amount of trouble, because that system is extremely powerful, because there's this, these political people that are making the rules and making rulings and edicts. And then they have this enforcement arm, unfortunately, with our law enforcement, that are willing to do whatever they say. I mean, talk about kind of a cultic type of system, where one person could, no matter what they say, no matter how wicked or evil it is, how right or wrong it is, how lawful or unlawful it is, how constitutional or unconstitutional it is, no matter what, you have these people that have badges and guns, and they're very organized in communication. They have lots of funding, so forth. You have them that are going to do whatever these people say, right or wrong. That's like a cultic type of organization. And it's not the way our system was supposed to be. Each person was supposed to take an oath, and that oath was so that they can say, no, this is not right. But that we don't do that anymore. So anyway, I just emphasize that if we can't get back into control of our law enforcement and back in control of our judicial system, we are in a tremendous amount of trouble. That's where you get the SS police type of actions. That's where you get the Stalin type of stuff. That's where you get, because they make one type of people, they isolate them as a political enemy, and then they completely destroy them. That's what happened to the Jews. That's what happened to the Ukrainians. And that's this is what happens, right? I'm not talking recent Ukraine. I'm talking about, during the Stalin's time. So where they killed over 13 million people and 3 million children, making them their political enemies, and then using the government officials to do it. And so anyway, we don't want to be in that situation. It's time to wake up. It's time to make sure that these people know that there's a little bit of a balance of power. And that balance of power has to be you and I, has to be the people.
I would ask people to consider too, during those atrocities that you mentioned, the press could be counted on to validate and to back up anything the state was doing as righteous and necessary, and anybody who opposed it was, portrayed as, an enemy. So something to keep in mind when they're, reporting about that anti-government activist Ammon Bundy.
Yeah, there's tremendous amount of history that we have that are very parallel to the direction that we are going in this country, and we just don't want to go there. We do not want to go there. And I'm going to stand where I'm standing, Bryan. I'm going to stand right here, not yielding. I know that what I did was right. I know that I spoke the truth. I know that the way that this is being used to try to destroy Diego and I and those around us is completely banana republic type of action, and we don't want that. We don't want that in this country.
Well, God bless. And Ammon, thanks so much for taking the time to visit with me.
Thank you, Bryan. I appreciate it.